being is about this movement through the story. And we often don't talk about that progression.
A piece of your life that an experience that you had when you were younger in high school, you took that experience and then applied it to the next place that you were brought in your journey of life.
And the example you gave is that's the intentional piece of the awareness. But it even happens, when we're not aware, just because our mind and body and heart, our internal operations are always taking note. But as long as you do it with confidence.
And that's one thing I'm going to do.
Nobody.
One thing I'm going to do is make sure that what I say, you won't know. Welcome back to the Better Mind podcast, powered by Nestry, with Dr. Tommy Shavers and me, Chloe DeLuca. In this final chapter of our journey, we arrive at the epilogue, the place where being meets reality. We began with existing, moved through essence, and expanded into extension, exploring who we are at our core and who we become through connection with others. And now we turn our attention to the epilogue of this final episode of our 4-part series. We confront the reality of progression, the truth that every life has an arc, a shelf life, and a moment that asks us to choose who will we be. So let's dive into this final episode of this series of the Better Mind podcast. The information being presented is not meant to replace the advice from a licensed medical doctor and should not be used to treat or diagnose any medical conditions. This podcast makes no medical claims. All health-related tips are for teaching and informational purposes only. Welcome back.
It's great to be back.
We're on our final episode of our 4-part podcast series on being human.
This has been. I told you it was going to be good.
Yeah,
it's been good. The last podcast was awesome, though.
Yeah, it was great to have our extensions on.
Our partners. Yes. Shout out to partners. We're still ready to get that partnership going, but. Continue.
My thoughts are no longer present. I actually dissolved in my brain. I'm no longer here.
Our extensions, our better halves
joined us
on
the podcast last week. And that was awesome. What was the best part for you?
I think the cool part was just being able to visualize, the extension of 30 days and 30 years, just, having the newness and the time experience all together, I thought that was pretty cool. And then I always get to see Ben. Ben is pretty studly, so
he is.
Yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah, he's pretty special.
Yeah, and obviously the greatest woman of all time.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely think it was cool. I wish we could have shared more stories because I just feel like that's just so much fun. But there's, like, to your point, the difference of 30 years and 30 days and being able to see, like, perspective on where you're at and where we're at, and just seeing how, what time does to people and how it changes your experience and how you describe what you've been through.
I mean, it was a great example for people not to get terrified. It's like, see what it looks like, see how it goes 30 years later. Like, it's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And so today, now we're getting into the epilogue of our series.
Yeah, why don't you set that up for us?
So Tommy desired for me to bring a definition of epilogue.
Please.
So I'm going to do that now. So the definition of epilogue from Chat, Google, whatever at this point, because it's like every time you Google things, Chat GPT is your answer.
AI will answer.
So epilogue is a section or speech at the end of a book or play. Are we good with this?
Keep going. We're getting there.
Okay. A section or speech at the end of a book or play that serves as a comment on or a conclusion to what has happened.
There we go. All right.
I'm not going to lie. When I saw speech at the end of a book, or I'm like, okay, yes, it is epilogue, but is that in regards to human behavior? Does that still apply?
It kind of does. And if there's some other ways to create that definition too. I think.
How would you create that definition?
I mean, I think it's the summation of the story, being able to put it in the context. You're at the end of it all, and now you get to look at it in context, how we've moved through the story. And so that's what we've done in this 4-part series. And it'll be what our conversation is about being. Being is about this movement through the story. And we often don't talk about that progression, that life has a beginning, arc, in transition, and all of it's the beauty of being.
So in this epilogue, maybe we should discuss kind of, the title of this episode is People, Purpose, Pursuits, Progression. And so I guess, is there any value in the whole inner circle of who we are, how we keep people around us? Like, is there anything to what we talked about in our previous episode that applies to how we end? I'm trying to honestly track how we end and what the epilogue really means. I'm not 100% grasping how this applies with human behavior in all the 3 episodes that we've kind of broke down. So I kind of would love some.
Yeah. And it has this dual meaning. I mean, it has a dual meaning in the sense of how we're talking about it on the podcast, but also how it's lived out in our lived experience, right? And so you went through kind of the existing
essence, and then we came into the extension of our human behavior and who we are, and now we're into
the epilogue. And so we're talking about now, what does the story look like? What does the journey look like? There's a time duration on life that it happens in movement. We move through life. If you look back at our last episode, we were looking at 30 days of extension and 30 years of extension, right? And so there was time that's moved. We're looking at you guys and we're trying to remember what our first 30 days look like. I mean, there's so much life that's been done in that time frame, new life that's been established, loved ones that have moved on. And so being able to look at it not in isolation, but in progression, that being is this movement through life that for us to make the most out of it, we have to start thinking about it in that way. What do you want your legacy to be? Are you thinking about life in the continuum that it is? Not in isolation, where a lot of people really mess up and not understanding that our past has an influence on our presence, which has an influence on our future. Having us to start to think about life as a journey that has an endpoint. It has a destination. It isn't a forever thing. And that's a part of life. And if we can start thinking about it in that way, it helps us to be more intentional about our days. It helps us to think about the legacy or the impact we want to leave behind. And it allows us to, in some ways, be humble and appreciate humanity, that we only have so much time to impact this existence in whatever form or fashion we choose to do it. But often people don't think that way. And then, you'll see people get to the end of their lives and have so much regret on, if I knew, I would have did life so much different than I do it now. And this conversation allows us to think about, the fact that if you understand that the time is precious, the journey is a continuum, it should reshape the intentionality that you move through being with. Does that make sense?
It reminds me of an example that I think you mentioned one time where you were talking about how like a piece of your life that an experience that you had when you were younger in high school, you took that experience and then applied it to the next place that you were brought in your journey of life. And so being able to like properly capture what continuum really means, I thought was done really well in this example you mentioned of like, you know, what I gained in my 20s, I'm bringing to my 30s. What I gained from my 30s, I'm bringing to my 40s. I'm not just living in this season of my life for a season and then just like forgetting all the experience and life that I've gained and then just jumping to a new thing. I'm taking what I've been given and continuously bringing it to this next part of my life, which to me is a really great way for me to understand what continuum. My life is a journey. It's not just a destination by destination by destination by destination, which then limits your ability to look at life as a journey, right?
Yeah, and not only that, it helps us to make more sense of the challenges that and experiences that we have and we face as we get older. And, I've heard people talk a lot about this concept of, childhood trauma, right? And there's real validity to that. But it's not just, that's just one aspect of this ideal around this continuum, because everything we do, if you remember it or if you subconsciously have forgotten it, there are still memories being shaped and formed that become the building blocks of how your mind and brain sees the world, and so if you want to live a great life, there's a part of understanding that how you start impacts how you continue. But often we don't think about it in that way.
No, because it's not really talked about that you should, take your life experiences and like build them from where you want to go. Like thinking about, like you said, how you want to impact people, how you want to leave this world, like better or less impacted, whatever it is. Like, are you doing the things now in the relationships you have now to see that outcome be true, of leaving a true imprint on where you've been and who you've encountered? We talked about that a little bit on our previous podcast. And, it's so interesting because it's like you've talked about how your children, look at me and my husband as like, really awesome people who are capable of doing anything, are just these, you can do whatever and Chloe can do this and that. And it's really, really awesome to hear. But it also puts the mirror up to our face too of like, how do we carry ourselves? And we've had game nights 100% where, I've absolutely spoken the way that I've been taught to speak when it comes to games and competition. And it's that we don't play around here. You get it done and it doesn't matter how it happens, and you get it done and you get it done at any cost. And your daughter was very, very vocal about like, you're being mean, or like, that's not nice to say. And just being very, very like, tiny trumpets, like being able to share like, hey, I'm paying attention. Right. Hey, I'm taking stock of what you're doing. I'm observing you. And it put the mirror up to my face of like, dang, can't get away with that stuff anymore. Like, gotta kind of be on point. Like, because to your point, hearing that feedback and that love from you and your wife about how your kids see us, it's like, what am I doing right now on my journey to remain in that place of being a role model, I guess, is what it is. Yeah. And that matters too, because like we want to make an impact as well. We've seen how you and your wife have made impact on everyone that you guys have encountered. And to your point of just this ongoing journey of learning how to apply what you've been given to the people that you've been put with in this life, how do you continue to leave a positive impact on the people that are observing you? And I think my way of understanding things is always by like real life examples. And so as I'm like processing this conversation, I'm like, oh, okay, I think this is kind of what he's talking about, right? Like just.
And the example you gave is that's the intentional piece of the awareness. But it even happens, when we're not aware, just because our mind and body and heart, our internal operations are always taking note and taking account of our lived experiences. And I remember when I was doing my essay for doctoral school, and I had to, the admissions piece, and you had to write about this thing, and I was writing about, what I'd done so far in my life and the things I'd accomplished and the things I'd become. And I remember as I was writing it, I was like, wait, what? I became a teacher, a coach, a minister. And I was like, I had zero plans of being any of those things in life. Like that was not the plan. And I'm thinking back, like, in my mind, I'm thinking, how did I get off track? Because I didn't want to be any of those. My job was to be a pro athlete, own a team, manage a team. That was my future. And then I started kind of doing some forensics on my lived experience. Like, how did that happen? And I was like, oh my gosh, those were the three most impacting people or connections in my youth. My teachers, a teacher in particular, two of them, my coaches, who I love and honor till this day, my youth coaches, and then the spiritual people that were in my life, the ministers, the people who took us in and helped. Like, I became all of them, and I was like, I've been hoodwinked, I've been tricked, like, and it made me think, and I was like, this works. Like, there was no intention of me becoming this. It was a part of the progression of my lived experience. And if you think about, in many ways, we become what we experience, right? And whether good or bad.
Right, because there's a bad.
But that's the part that I think is important for us to think about on this journey. I've reflected back, and I know many people do this too. Like, they go and say, hey, I look back on my younger years with regret. I wish I wasn't as wild or carefree or whatever. But we grow and we adapt. But our lives, our previous lives frame and shape how we see ourselves, and it creates the trajectory of where we go. And so it's super important for us to think about life. And we talked about this too around essence, that we have the ability to paint our own picture. Mm-hmm. But our lived experiences determine what type of colors and tools we have to paint with. You get what I'm saying? And so we make the best out of those experiences, if you will. And so this idea of being, it's important for us to understand as we move through life, never look at life in isolation, because there is no such thing. There is no such thing. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when social media was created, when the book face or the face match, Facebook, when Meta, she was, no, I was pulling my old Bill Belichick there. But I remember when it was coming online and all the great things that were happening with people connecting and everything. But one of the things that people talked about that was also happening was old connections that should have stayed dead were coming back to life. But if you understand the science, you understand that those connections, they're there. And if they have the ability to be relived, re-experienced, reignited, those are memories, those are lived experiences. And we can't totally separate from them because they've
already happened.
They've happened. And so
it's what, like, the brain holds on to those things.
They're memories, they're lived experiences. And we can grow beyond, but what we can't do is believe that they don't have an impact on who we are and how we live. And I think that a lot of people weren't ready because time and distance created limitations around experiences that you've moved past.
Right.
And now that was all collapsed. And now there was this opportunity for
things to reignite from your past.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that took a societal adjustment.
It's still, I mean, we have so much access to things we don't need access to. We're overexposed to people's lives that we really don't have much reason to know about. Like, why do I know? I always say, like, not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. And it's like...
And today, that's a whole different thing because...
Yeah, everyone gets one.
I mean, in the past, we had a past. And
in the past, we had a past.
We had a past.
There's no more past anymore because anything you've posted, it's in the present.
Yes. In the past, we had a past. And it was interesting. You know, my wife and I, we recently, one of our high school classmates posted a video of our homecoming. And we were like, I wonder if we're on. Yep, there we are. You know, and our baby girl was like, oh, can I see? And we were like, nope. Nope, baby girl, you can't see. And the cool thing was we were married. So like we were married at homecoming. So like it was us. But the other thing was just watching so many people, and we start seeing the comments and people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you posted that, or I can't believe I kissed him, or I can't believe like those, yeah. You get what I'm saying? Like stuff that
from your past that you have outgrown.
Right. That's now here in living color with lived experiences. And I just, it was just another example of like, you know, those moments happen, right? And how do we take account of those moments? How do we be intentional? Like what you do today will have influence on your tomorrow. But if you don't move with that awareness and intentionality,
and you just move in an isolated mindset of life, then it completely changes how you act too.
If you're so short-sighted, you know, you're not doing your future self really justice. And, you know, it's funny because when you're younger, you think you have all of the energy, the life, you can eat whatever, do whatever, and, you know, but what you really aren't thinking about is what you do now is going to be preparing you for how you live in the future.
Yeah.
And, you know, how much do you care about your future self?
To do the work now.
It's
such a practical example that I have of that. Like, I remember, because it's like this is language for what I've noticed, but I thought it was just growing, becoming more mature, just like, oh, this is what people that grow and become more mature do. But like little things like being more on point about putting caps to your cups in the same place, or like keeping a receipt, or like thinking about future self. Like I used to put my passport anywhere because I was like, who cares? I'm not going to see this thing ever again until I fly somewhere out the country. And when is that going to be? I don't know. And I would always not really know where things are because I was like, it didn't matter in the moment. So in the moment, it didn't matter. But now a year later, the moment matters and I have no clue where I put that thing. I no longer have enough lids for all my cups. All my socks are mixed matched because in the moment I was trying to finish my laundry super fast. But now I'm like, now my mindset's so different now where I'm like, even Ben, like my husband, you know, there'll just be things where I'm like, this belongs here, this belongs here. Like even in the junk drawer, there is no junk drawer.
There's always junk.
There's not a junk drawer.
There's a junk. There isn't. Absolutely a junk drawer.
The junk drawer has compartments where even the junk has a place. The junk has a home. Like the little extra putting together furniture. You get all these extra little pieces. I always used to throw those things out because the bed is now put together. The couch put together. Why am I keeping the things?
The extra buttons that come on.
But then when that extra button falls off, you're wondering, well, gosh dang it.
That's what that was for.
And so now when like Ben's putting together all of my stuff, like building the things, I'm like keeping all of that and putting it in the junk drawer where it belongs, in the certain compartment where it belongs, because when we take it apart, we're going to need it. And I finally am at this place to where I'm like, no, let's be mindful about this in this moment. It may not have a purpose for now, but later it will.
I think that's a perfect and hilarious practical example.
Like, being wise about not living in the short term, like you said. It's like language you don't realize that applies to like things that we go through on the daily.
Yeah. I think one, you know, we can't go back and redo ours, but if we think about our children and we think about helping, you know, what we're doing and pouring into them now is going to be the basis of what shapes them in the future. And I remember telling, you know, my oldest son once we were going to a movie, and this was years ago. He probably was early teens, maybe, or mid or preteen, and he just said, like, you know, Dad, I love the time that you spend with me. Like, this is awesome. And I shared with him, I said, I appreciate that, you know, and I love spending my time with you. And I said, but I want you to also learn what I'm doing. I'm not just doing this for you. I'm doing this for my grandson's grandson. Like, if I want amazing great grandchildren, how much more do I have to put into you now for it to resonate and have the ripple effect 2-3 generations?
That is life on a continuum.
That is absolutely.
That's a great example of life and continuum.
And I shared that but that's been my, you know, the mindset of how far do I want my impact to reach? And how far do I want this ripple effect to ripple? Well, it depends on the force that I put into the moment with intentionality, that I'm trying to create a ripple effect that goes out as far as possible. And so that's what this conversation is around being with intentionality, you know, that our experiences impact us, but we have the ability to impact, you know, the continuum of lives by how we show up, invest in the moment with intentionality. And so when I'm loving up on my children and spending time with my children, and, you know, I ask myself, am I doing enough for this love to ripple to my children's children? If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it brings me kind of back to the first conversation that we've had, which I think is awesome, that there is the mindset that humans can take of like thinking that just being is enough, just being here. And when I say being, I don't mean being taking full advantage of what being really means, but like just existing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, trying to get through the day. And we talked about that on the first podcast. Like, how that is so not the grateful stance that you could have when you see how much your body is doing to just be here in this moment, what the inside of your body, your brain, and all the things are doing on a high level every single day just for you to formulate a thought, formulate a sentence, move your hand, be able to do what I tell my hands to do.
You were made to do so much more. Absolutely.
It's a high complex experience that we're living right now by just being. And your mindset is definitely not the average mindset. Not everyone thinks that way. Thinking about how much of a ripple effect can my actions create for my children, my children's children, my friends, my family.
Families, coworkers.
My extensions.
Yes.
And it's just another like reiteration of like the importance of appreciating what our bodies do and what they're meant to do, and then taking advantage of that awesome power we have with the gift that we were given of just being here, you know, and it looks different for everyone, like we talked about in the first episode. Like, not everyone's existence, not everyone's being, not everyone's like ripple effect looks the same, but taking that note of like, okay, what does it look like for me today to take advantage of this moment and to live for later, but also for now, not to like create anxiety.
But it's that relationship between the present and the future, that interplay that helps you appreciate the now with intentionality, because you're thinking about the ripple effect.
Right.
It makes today have more meaning.
And give you more juice.
It makes the pursuit, have more of, of a, not just a sense of urgency, but a sense of purpose to it.
Purpose and matter.
Yeah. And that purpose piece is like a part of this conversation around Epilogue, where
the ending,
there is an ending. And, I remember one of my doctoral classes, we had a project on end of life care and end of life. And, and if you've lived long enough, you've seen life transition. And I just remember people being uncomfortable with the conversation. But if you talk to experts around well-being, and, the thing they try to get people to understand is death is a part of life. It's the totality of it that makes up this ideal of what we call life. And if we don't think that way, if we try to not think about it, and some people want to avoid it, and look, these things we live in as bodies, they were made to wind down. They have an arc.
A shelf life. They
have a shelf life. Mm-hmm. And I've had this concept around this, that everything has a shelf life. And if you think about it in that way, it helps you to spend less time trying to avoid the inevitable, but embrace the reality. I want to live my best journey. I want my kids to tell such embellished stories about how awesome I was, because it came from me being awesome in their lives. And I want to make the biggest dent in this world as possible on my way passing through. Because once you've lived long enough, you start to realize that, before you know it, you're in your 20s. And then you blink and you're in your mid-30s, and then you look around and you're close to 50, and as we had, Dr. Wright on, if you remember when she came on, and she was like, those are your best years. Mm-hmm. Like, we should be getting excited about this arc, this trajectory, and doing now.
Mm-hmm. If you're doing what you got to do in the now to enjoy
the later.
The best parts of your years. Yeah. Your best years come from what you do now.
Yeah. Pay now or pay later.
Right.
And
that applies really well.
And so like, it helps us to don't mess it up. Like we were made to go do life in such an incredible way. And we only have so much time, and some people's lives are shorter than others, and all we can do is control the controllables. But if you understand that, there's a shelf life, and the things you do today, there's going to be a point where you're not able to do those things, right? And I gave my baby girl a piggyback ride to the car the other day from the park. And, she'd been running around and she was tired. She was like, Dad, I can't. And I was like, I don't know how you're going to get to the car then, because, Dad, and she gave me that look like, and I'm like,
pick me up, brother.
Here we go. Mind you, she's about to be 9. So, and I'm carrying her to the car, piggyback ride, and it was a great experience. 2 days later, my body was like, yeah, I'm coming to, cash that check, and that payment is due. And and I'm like, what are these pains that I'm experiencing? And in the past,
that was nothing.
It was nothing. Now there's some cost to it, but there will be a time where there won't be any more piggyback rides. And I think about, taking advantage of these opportunities and making memories and making moments, and while you have the time.
Yeah.
Because time is finite, and we can't roll back, we can't extend. What we can do is appreciate and optimize time to the best of his ability, because we understand that everything has a shelf life, and I'm okay. I'm excited about moving through that shelf life, because I'm going to do everything I can to make a dent in this world, to leave a legacy, to have that ripple effect, reach my children's children, and get excited about, because I can look back on the people that have poured into me who are no longer here, that I'm an extension of, that they live still through me. You know what I mean? And that used to always be a kind of a weird thing for me to think about. People go, you'll live on in us. And I'm like, nope, I'm gone, But now I understand it, because I do. Like, I bring up my coaches who are no longer here all the time. You guys have heard about them, like they're here. And my children know about them, and their children will know about them. Their legacy will continue to have this ripple effect. I just had a chance to talk to one of them the other day on Christmas, and he's still the same fiery, argumentative, and I'm like, you don't stop yet? Like,
you're not tired.
You're not, and nope, that's who he is. But that's where a lot of us got our confidence from him. We think we could take on the world because he told us we could, and we did. And I'm so grateful. You know what I mean? My kids get to get that same energy, because he had enough energy that pass on to children's children. You see what I'm saying? And so that's what this conversation was really about, is thinking about being in this time-sensitive continuum that there's no do-overs, and there is a finality. And how do you want to be remembered? Right? How do you want to be remembered? Some people may go, I don't care. Well, you kind of do. Like,
yeah,
you get what I'm saying? Do. Because 100%. If there are people you care about, then you understand that their lives are impacted, when you're no longer here, and to value that journey and to honor it with responsibility.
And everything was said.
Got it.
No, I mean, seriously, I mean, everything. Because I was like, it's an encouraging way to talk about life in its ending, and it's a different and an awesome conversation that reframes the way people look at time and how it's how you live it in the now, but also that it 100% has an end date, an expiration date. I mean, like, everybody's walking to that. You gave that example of like a escalator.
Yeah.
And then you get off the escalator and then you're gone. And it's like, but it's not this morbid conversation. It's just not that. And it's this awesome reframe on how we can take advantage of our time while being. And I think that this conversation absolutely, it worked out for the way that it needed to. I'm glad we built a good foundation on.
It was some work.
I didn't know where we were going.
It was some work. I
wasn't sure where we were going, but
I
now I know, and I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, this is an awesome conversation.
So, in conclusion, Chloe, how has this journey been for you? Because remember now, you were kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a lot of science, a lot of words, homeostasis, and like words.
Summation.
Which
is really not, okay.
Yeah, but when you're not in that life, I don't know, corporate opens you up to words that I'm an athlete. Like, why am I saying the word summation unless and then I'm reading fun books that are easy reads, I'm not like, but I have been learning a lot in just like the way humans exist and how we were created to be. And it does make sense. Now, it made sense, honestly, the first conversation when I was like, okay, I know what he's doing, truthfully. But yeah, reading the notes, nope. The notes did not come alive on paper. Nope, it was not a living anything. It just was there. No, I was reading it for what it was. Words on a blank paper. But, I loved how you were able to bring this conversation to life through examples, storytelling, and being able to share, just the beauty of the nature of humans. Like, we are really awesome. And they all tied in really well. I mean, everything tied in. It was all one story. And I think that's why we chose for it to be, a 4-part series. And it's been awesome, too, to be able to pull things from what we talked about in episode 2 and episode 1 and how it so easily connects to episode 4 and how it's all one continuum of a story. And so I think this conversation is also on point because this conversation was a continuum from 1, 2, 3, 4. Epilogue is all about living our lives on a continuum, our journey. And so I think it came together really well. I think our viewers also really enjoyed it. I've got some great feedback, and so I'm excited to see what we do next. We actually have some pretty exciting episodes coming up. So
yeah, I'm excited about what we got coming up too.
Yeah, so it's time to make a transition to our next season. I think we're gonna make this into I think this is the cap of our first season.
This has been awesome. Time has literally flown.
Yeah, we were on episode,
Lives have
I think,
been
11.
Changed.
Yeah.
Last names have been changed.
Yep. Rings have been added. Husbands have been found.
This has been awesome. So, and I'm excited about, next season.
Yeah.
And to all of our viewers and listeners, thank you for hanging out with us. We started this thing with this idea that, how can this idea of creating curiosity around thinking differently about humans and how we work and how we operate. And so I'm just excited to see how it keeps moving.
Podcast is an extension of Nestry. And it's been awesome, too, to see how the science of Nestry easily connects with what we talk about every single day on this podcast. I mean, what we talk about on the podcast is the essence of Nestry.
Absolutely.
Look, I'm using words that I didn't use before to express myself. Like, this is a positive.
It's been impacted.
It has. I probably won't use summation until I read the definition.
You will.
I'll have to read the definition to really know what it means, because sometimes I'll use words completely out of.
But as long as you do it with confidence.
And that's one thing I'm going to do.
Nobody.
One thing I'm going to do is make sure that what I say, you won't know. This
has been awesome. Appreciate you allowing me the space.
This was Tommy's.
To talk about being human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm just glad I could add to the base of what you created. So,
but this is really an evergreen, series. Share. You can share this with friends, family at any point when people are just, talking about life. Go back, re-listen to. It'll add tremendous value to your life, and so I'm glad that we've put it together.
And that's our episode, friends. We'll see you next season on the Better Mind Podcast.